Thank you very much, Laura. That wasn't quite as seamless as it would have been if you were on the route. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the wider public's views around these issues. So as a social psychologist in a collaborative project with socio-legal researchers, that was the bit of the project that I focused on. And what I want to kind of highlight really is some of the diversity of views around this issue of decertification. The images that I've put up here are precisely not decertification. So as Davina alluded to earlier, there are currently in a number of jurisdictions assimilationist or forms of registration that do take into account a third option in various different contexts, usually a neutral X marker, but that's kind of an incremental change rather than the more radical change that decertification puts on the table for thought. So I'm going to talk through three different ways that people talked about gender. And one of these accounts is what we've called before gender. So this very much was the most prevalent perspective in these data. And gender in this form of account is constituted through biological sex. It's official, formal, uninfluenceable, and it was communicated implicitly by most respondents disagreeing with our survey statements, such as identification as male and female should be removed from birth certificates. So hopefully when I've done that little preamble, it's given you a chance to read through this talk from Chloe, an interview. What we can see here is a strong and highly demarcated distinction between the biological reality of sex and the amorphous evolving thing that is gender, which is swiftly bracketed off by Chloe as of little interest generally or experientially. And this is the starting point from which Chloe builds quite a persuasive account. She does this in a number of ways. First, there is an absence of recognition of the ways in which law and regulatory frameworks have created, perpetuated, or failed to redress this patriarchal culture. So, for example, I think we could all agree that the Equal Pay Act of 1970 was pretty much a failure in that regard. And then she conceptualises law as offering particularly the protection as a female. Second, there's purpose and pace in the delivery. For example, Chloe cuts off the interviewer, myself, when I'm about to suggest an alternative wherein women's rights could be protected without a formal legal status, such as the Equality Act 2010, restating the self-evidence of her position, obviously. Third, there are other discursive devices which together function to create a persuasive account, which presents the before gender perspective that biological sex sits in front of law as self-evident, namely extreme case formulation. So using phrases and words that hearably go to extremes, like everybody's life has been totally affected. All my sisters who have struggled throughout the past 100 years and so on. So these phrases manage Chloe's investment in her account by positioning an alternative feminist view as inconceivable and inappropriate. Finally, her footing shifts and use of we are in this situation, we have far right people, function to position the account as believable and merely reporting the facts of the matter given the current wider context. So that's the most prevalent account in these data. There was also the with gender account, and in contrast, this offers a kind of a looser framing of gender, existing as a legal entity, but not dictating or constraining or otherwise positively or negatively shaping daily life. And Davy's brief account offers a clear illustration here. Now, Davy's account is delivered with a bit of disfluency, a bit of self-repair, I think it, and constructs the salience of legal gender as modest and just made significant when requested. There's a lack of specificity in his account. He doesn't indicate who or which bodies are asking for his gender, which again functions to generally downplay the effect it has on everyday life. Arguably, the with gender account is reflective of how certification operates in certain legal spheres, practically too, and I think, you know, Davina and Flora have alluded to that in what they've said so far today. Now, the existence of gender as a legal category was constructed as limited to only when you have to fill in boxes and things like that in the with gender kind of account. And here's just a brief example, which I'll just let you read through. So Ada's response to the question posed by Han in this instance is produced in a hedged way. I don't know, I guess, probably, suggesting a tentativeness and conditionality in her response. And then the only illustrations of the impact that legal gender has on her, or she's able to provide, are labelled as really silly, daft, and kind of consigned to history, a sort of fanciful and potentially almost fairy tale-like. Once upon a time, this happened. Now, I mean, interestingly, I think the Department of Transport statistics on accidents do demonstrate that female drivers are considerably safer and should get reduced insurance premiums. But that aside, you know, the unthinkability of legal gender substantively impacting on everyday life really does loom large in Ada's account here. Now, last but not least is the against gender account. And these were accounts where the discussion of other forms of legal gender are preferable, really, to the status quo. And we can see one here from Max. And we see here Max again uses an extreme case formulation every time about the jarring of being asked for a legal gender, which I think does more than create emphasis. It conveys their own investment in their position, which they go on to produce in a compelling three-part list form. I don't see, I don't think. And this three-part list, namely that gender is irrelevant, unnecessary and problematic, not only serves to stress the point, it functions to construct the issues with the current form of certification as more factual and real. There are no pronoun shifts in Max's account and 5 instances of first person, I think, etc. And that really functions to demonstrate ownership of this view, I would say, in this context. They are very much the author of their own talk. And like other non-binary interviewees and participants in our project, Max offers a solution to the problem of legal gender in either or terms. Though Max depicts the nuance and elaborateness of their lived experience in legal gender status being incongruous through the idiom doesn't paint a picture, the generic view, rather than them in particular, is presented as the beneficiary of gender labels being either all or nothing. So just to recap, there are 3 ways in which legal gender or decertification was constructed in the interviewees and also the survey respondents' data. So the before gender is very much an anti-decertification account, and decertification would be risky for native females. With gender is kind of agnostic. It's neither pro nor anti-decertification, though the impact of it is positioned as being very limited because legal gender per se is constructed as unimportant in everyday lives. And then the against gender is very much about, you know, decertification being a helpful, enabling tool, and not doing that is positioned as harmful to already marginalised groups. So that's us talking from the front.